How's it going, BFIT? Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I've upgraded the podcast room a little bit, as you can see in the background. I'll go ahead and play some clips too. But Brad and Cody have no idea, so I'm about to surprise them a little bit. Here they are.
One of you.
Dang, bro, you got the drip?
You gotta undo that one thing.
Yeah, no, there it goes. There. Got it.
Brad's got the drip for the pod, come on.
Copio right here. What's up? Never worn one of these in my life before. Clean. Whoa! Whoa!
What's the bench for?
No, that was actually to go to Charlie Cook.
Oh, I thought that was a prop.
No.
I was like, Jack, taking apart.
Oh, dang!
Oh, are we over here today?
On the edges, baby.
We're gonna be on the
On the ends.
Man.
Yes, sir.
Hello and welcome back to the BFIT Boys Podcast, episode 7. Today we are going to talk about the importance of building strength and muscle while also eating enough calories to supplement that. Got a couple shout outs today.
Well, I'm eating right now.
Brought to you by Colony House and Aaron Fraser providing our couch that we're normally on. Shout out number 1.
Shout out number 2, Copio Domingo, a little drip that I got rocking here. Thank you, my friend. Looks good. Thanks for letting me borrow it for the episode. Also to Dave Hine for telling me that this is called a drip. I appreciate that. Heard you say that one time. So, 56-year-old financial advisor giving us street cred. Not bad.
All right.
And I'm eating right now.
And Brad's always eating.
Eating.
So what we're leading off with. So we've all been told that moving more is going to result in more calorie burn. But that's not always the case. I'm going to break out some science. So there's a study done on the hunter-gatherer tribe in Africa, modern hunter-gatherers, okay? So everybody knows what hunter-gatherers are. They go get their food. They go have to hunt for it. They have to go pick it every day, pretty often. So they're very active, over like 20,000 steps a day, okay? Well, they tested all of their, double water, whatever. They tested their energy burn, essentially, and how much they consume. They essentially came out with that those hunter-gatherers, the average male consumed and burned roughly 2,600 calories. The average female was roughly 1,900 calories. Okay? That is very similar to what the average American consumes today. But you would think with how much they move and they're on the run, wouldn't they burn a lot more? No, that's not the case. And that's just where the complexity of the metabolism comes into play. Because essentially what they are doing, okay, they're getting their bodies are pretty much telling them that they need to figure out how to survive and adapt on as little calories as possible. Because obviously they're not eating a ton of food trying to be hunter-gatherers, okay? But they're also moving a ton. So they're pretty much sending a signal to their body like, hey, we don't need tissue on our body. We need to be surviving on as little tissue as we can, whether that be, actually, basically, we don't need muscle, we don't need fat, we just need enough tissue to survive, okay? That's a signal they're sending their body, okay? So we think about that in an exercise sense, someone who's not strength training, now I get it if you're like a runner and that's what you do, okay? But someone who is trying to lead an overall healthier lifestyle, if all they're doing is running and sending that signal that they need to be more efficient with calories, that's essentially telling their body that they don't need muscle, and that is not the signal we want to be sending our bodies, okay?
Don't you think even the long distance runner the marathon trainer needs some level of strength though?
No.
Some sort of tissue level. I mean, just the amount.
I absolutely do. Now I'm talking. Now if we're talking like high level, like marathon runners that do that for a living and get paid for it,
yeah,
they don't need a bunch of muscle tissue because that's what, like, high level sport is not healthy in pretty much any sense of the word healthy.
Yeah.
Okay, because they are at the extremes because it's what they are doing for sport.
Let's say this. It's just
and that's really any sport. That is marathon runners. That is Tour de France athletes. That's high level bodybuilders. If we're talking strength, or high level power lifters, even that's probably on the less extreme end, but that's still high level powerlifters. You're putting a lot of stress and toll on your body. You know.
So the person who just the ordinary person who trains enough to where they are able to qualify for, say, the Boston or the Chicago Marathon, like what is their strength training? You know what I mean? Like where does that fall in that?
If someone's doing that and they're running multiple times a week, like long distance, they probably don't need more than one full body strength session a week. Just enough to build enough and maintain enough muscle mass.
Yeah.
To still like send that signal, because they obviously don't want to build them enough because it's going to slow them down. They're not going to do what their desired outcome is.
Exactly.
So someone that level doesn't need that much.
Yeah.
But as long as they know that they're sacrificing some health for sport, you know, I want them to know that that's what they're doing. Like, not like, oh, I'm doing this because I want to be healthier. It's like, well, it's probably not, in the sense of the term healthy, probably not the healthiest thing you could be doing, you know? And so that is why I think strength training is so important, because, well, before we get into that, let's talk about eating enough calories.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So someone who is doing that, obviously they need to fuel themselves, because one, you're sending the signal to your body that I don't need any muscle tissue. I don't need any tissue on my body. I'm trying to be as light and fast as possible. Evolutionarily speaking, we needed that back for thousands of years because we had to run from predators and prey. But now we obviously don't need that. So now if you're not eating enough calories, that's essentially two negative signals you're sending your body. Okay. One, you're moving so much, you're sending your body like, you need to get really efficient with calories. Okay. Now, if you're not eating enough, that's a second signal. It's like, oh, we're not eating enough calories. We need to adapt to moving this much on this little calories. And so that's why those hunter-gatherers can move 20, 30,000 steps a day and still only eat 2,000, 2,500 calories. Whereas if you think about someone who is so I hope that makes sense. That makes sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely you've got to have enough fuel to make the car go. And the car will get used to like a number of calories, and it can continue to produce at this slower pace, but a constant pace.
Exactly. And that is our body being very efficient with calories, which sounds good, but we want our bodies to be like super inefficient with calories, which means
explain that. You want it to be
so our
super
body's really good at
inefficient.
moving a lot on very little calories. It's doing what it needs to do to survive. So it's super efficient with the calories it intakes. Okay. But we live in a world where we want our bodies to be super inefficient with calories. We have access to all kinds of food. We have access to foods that have never been thought of before the last 50 years that taste super good. We want to be able to eat as many calories as we
Twinkies, there we go.
We want to be able to eat as many calories as we can while still achieving our goal. So like if you want to be in a place where you're eating, this is just a random number. Like for myself, I would like, if I was to try and lose weight, I could probably do it on like 3,000 calories or a little bit more. Okay. That's a good spot to be in. That is called metabolic flexibility. That allows me to, even if I'm dieting per se, to go out for a night at Chipotle or out to eat, and I can eat whatever I want and eat dessert and not have to worry about putting on any extra fat mass or anything. Okay. Because I ate a 2,000 calorie meal. Or I can go on a week's long vacation and kind of just eat and not worry about gaining 10 pounds. Okay.
But when you go on those vacations and stuff, I mean, how much of that also walks in as like water weight, salt?
No, there is. There is for sure a lot of water weight and salt. But,
so you have that because I mean, obviously you're eating out. You're not eating your standard, probably I know as well as you cook, standard food. So, I mean, I'm definitely. I'm tracking with you 100%.
So think of this. So someone who normally eats 1,500 calories, goes on a vacation and consumes 3,500 calories, 4,000 calories a day.
And they do that for like 7 days.
Okay. Think of the excess calories there.
Is their body, okay.
Versus someone like me who can eat 3,500 calories a day and I eat 4,000, 4,500 calories, 5,000 even there. So that's only 1,000 excess a day.
Yeah.
Okay. So think of the calorie difference. 2,000 calorie difference a day versus a 1,000 calorie difference a day. That adds up to 5,000 to 7,000 calorie difference in that week.
So is their body going to automatically turn those calories from that single week into, fat? Or are they going to simply just feel really sluggish for that time until their body is, even maybe they gain a pound or 2 pounds or maybe even 3 or 4 pounds, 5 pounds from water weight and excessive salts. Help me understand that.
So
you know what I mean? Like, what is that? What point does the body start to turn from a week of vacation into fat?
It's a lot of times a combination of the three. There's going to be some water weight held.
Yeah.
There's going to be some fat mass because the calories do have to go somewhere.
Yeah, and not out the toilet.
Yeah,
not all of
and
them.
You're also probably going to feel like crap for a couple of days anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's going to be a combination of the three.
Yeah.
But I will say the person who's eating less calories is going to put on a higher percentage of fat mass. Now, it may not be a ton, but you come home from...
So the person who's eating less, so like you're saying you would put on a greater amount of fat?
No, the person who's eating less. Like the person who's eating 1,500
the
calories.
The person who normally eats less.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And so they come home and then
they look at the scale and they're like, crap, I'm 8
gained all
pounds
this
higher.
weight, so all of a sudden I'm going to binge into
And
a
they're
hard
going to restrict.
diet.
They're going to restrict. Yeah.
Not binge,
And
but
that is a vicious cycle that you don't want to be in.
So, like somebody that is trying to figure that out, trying to figure out like how many calories do I eat and how do I find out like what is best for me? Like, do you have a strategy for that?
So my first strategy is I try not to just tell people to go track calories immediately.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to tell people like, hey, I want you to just stick to like foods that don't come in a package. Like stick to whole foods for at least 80 to 90% of the time. Okay. And obviously that's going to be hard to do, but we got to have a little bit of self-control and willpower to do that, to get to the desired goal we want. Okay. And I won't guarantee it, but I will say it is very hard to overeat eating whole foods only, because it's going to be hard for me to overeat on a bowl of fruit and rice and some grilled chicken thighs. Even if I make it taste as delicious as I could possibly think of, eating that whole food is going to fill me up. The foods a lot of the foods that are packaged, they are designed to make you want to eat more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because salt, fat, and sugars all combined, carbohydrates and stuff like that, that basically like leaves that is basically designed and engineered to make you want to eat more.
Yeah, most certainly.
So
let's kind of hold on that idea what you're talking about. I like the idea of whole foods, and that's one thing I know. Kayla, our nutrition coach, she talks a lot about eating or shopping on the perimeters.
To expand on it, okay, to make it simpler.
Well, I wanted to give you some life examples.
No, okay.
Let me do this first.
Yeah, sorry.
Right.
I'm not going to take anything away per se.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to keep eating the way they were, I'm going to tell that person, be like, hey, I want you to add protein at every meal.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to add 1 serving of vegetables at every meal.
Yeah.
You can eat everything else the exact same. I want you to add some protein. I want you to add some vegetables, and I want you to add some water.
Yeah.
I'm not taking anything away at that point. I'm not telling them they can't have something. I'm like, hey, you can have those things, but I want you to focus on these 3 ththings, making sure you get those 3 things in.
Yeah. And I think, I think the Kaylee lines up 100% with you. That's what she communicates. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think you're right on track there, with her and just kind of our vision of trying to replace and not take away. For those that
don't know, Kaylee is our nutrition coach here at BFIT. For anybody that's watching and doesn't know Kaylee.
And she does a great job. So definitely I agree 100% with Cody. I guess my question is, and I think this is the conversation Kaylee and I have a lot, is for the parent who, has 2 or 3 or 12 kids, whatever it is, trying to figure out like, hey, Monday night, kid A, B, and C have things, every night there's something, and trying to balance working and meal prep and feeding your kids in the best way possible through, like you said, whole foods. I think that's one thing, Heidi and I, we do the darndest to not eat out. I mean, that is something, man, we are set on, like we eat out maybe once every 2 weeks, which I think is a pretty good ratio. It's so expensive for our family of 5. It's expensive. So, but like, I think that's the biggest thing for families. It's like, gosh, how do I take this idea that I think is right and always get that implemented? You know what I mean? Keeping kids out of packaged foods, that are enticing. You know what I mean? Keeping yourself when you're on the run out of a packaged food. I think that's always the balance, the battle. So I guess do you have any suggestions? Like, how would somebody, who literally their wife or their husband, whoever's the one who cooks in the home, like if they're cooking, if they're meal prepping, like let's take Heidi, she will meal prep our evening meal this afternoon and then we'll eat it tonight. Um, how does somebody like that encompass, like all of that, I guess is the thing, is like trying to balance, like we literally have 15 minutes to eat sometimes. You know what I mean? Like we try to meal prep and there's times not. I mean, just explain that. What does that look like in a real world?
Yeah, sure. That's definitely a hard situation. I think something that can help with that is, whether it be Monday or Sunday or just whenever you have time before the week starts, is maybe sitting down with your wife or whoever it is and just making a plan for the week. So you said you already make your lunches for the week, so that's already lined up. That's good to go. Okay, so but for dinners, you don't want to be running around like a chicken with your head cut off. So it's like, hey, honey, what do we want to make on, or what do we want to have prepared on Monday? Okay, what do we want to have prepared on Tuesday? We want to have taco meat ready, Taco Tuesday. Have these things maybe lined out, and you can maybe prepare early. Who is it that said this quote? Was it was John Wooden maybe? Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. I think that can be applied here as well, because if you don't have any, thing prepared, and say something random comes up, say there's something that's going on down here at the gym, you're like, crap, I got to go there.
Yeah.
You don't have stuff ready at home because you weren't prepared.
Yeah.
And that's when scenarios happen. So if you have stuff prepared or have stuff kind of lined out what you're going to have that day, or, ready to cook that day, that way it only takes 20 minutes to cook, it's ready to go.
Definitely. Well, and I think that's kind of what the last 18 months I've been able to kind of find that balance. Heidi and I have. So for people with families, Cody definitely has a lot of great input, and just like watching him eat in the office and then just listening to him, along with talking with Kaylee. It's kind of helped me as a father understand, like, hey, yes, I want my kids to eat the best, but at the end of the day, like, we're probably not going to get as many servings of vegetables in the evening meal as I would like. And so I'm going to meal prep that for myself. And I know Heidi does too, in the noon meal, trying to, have protein and vegetables at that noon meal that I've already prepped. So for like me, I prep on Sundays, just my noon meal. And I really try to watch that calorie intake, not to restrict myself, but that way we're not trying to balance as much in the evening meal.
That way you got some flexibility in your evening meal.
Exactly.
When you also got to feed 3 kids that, if they haven't been conditioned to it, they're not going to want to eat, chicken, rice, and some vegetables that night, So.
And I think that's definitely helped me. And so I think for other parents and families out there, it could be as simple as, I think Cody said, like some taco meat and a microwavable, like steamable vegetable. Having that in your lunch. Take that with you to work. I know I've done that before when I haven't had time to cut vegetables. I've had Heidi buy this 5 packs of vegetables that I bring with me, and I have my meat and I have my steamer vegetable, and that's it. Now, granted, I'd rather have the fresh ones, but the steamers will do me for a week if I have to use them. And I definitely think if you're wanting to make that commitment to replacing things in your diet, you're not restricting, but replacing, improving, like Cody said, increasing your protein, your vegetables, and doing that, you're slowly going to eat less of the other things, and you're going to see a change.
And you're going to slowly start to feel better too. And that's just
certainly
going to be a positive feedback cycle. It's like you're going to feel better. You're like, man, I want to keep eating better. And so it's just a positive feedback. One helps the other and just keeps helping one another.
And one of the biggest things that I have to give you and Kaylee credit for, I never realized how much water intake changes the game also. I remember a buddy of mine was playing arena ball together, 20 years ago. He was a fullback and he ate like a fool. He was just a big eater. I was like, how do you keep from gaining weight? He goes, I just drink tons of water. I'm like, okay. And I didn't realize really, like, not that water is the weight loss key, but water is a huge factor in like getting your body started in the morning, like sending a signal to your colon saying, hey, need to discharge stuff. That's one thing Kaylee and I talked about. I never knew that, how much water really does to make you feel better.
And also when it comes to exercise, like you have to have water.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you work out, especially those that work out like first thing in the morning, and a lot of times if they haven't had water the night before or water that morning, they're going to be dehydrated, and like your muscles need water in order to fire appropriately.
Oh, yeah,
Like
most
if
certainly.
you're dehydrated, you will feel sluggish in a workout.
Yeah.
And that comes back to water and sodium. People think they need to avoid sodium. Well, if you're eating whole foods, you're not going to have a bunch of sodium anyway, so you probably need to add salt to every meal and probably even supplement with a little bit of sodium, especially if you're, working out.
Unless you have a
relatively
heart
hard.
condition, the doctor says not to. But hopefully you don't have a heart condition because you're eating whole foods, right?
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing. They did studies a long time ago where they correlated high salt intake with heart disease and everything, but actually it wasn't necessarily the high salt intake. Those people in the studies were consuming very high quantities of processed foods, which also have a lot of salt.
So it's like a double whammy.
Yeah, so they're like, oh, it's, the salt is also causing this, but it's like, oh, wait, no, it's the excess calories from the processed foods that they were consuming.
Well, I mean,
caused their weight gain. They were overweight, which leads to a whole bunch of negative factors that you don't want to have.
Most certainly. Yep.
So, well, anything else on nutrition, or shall we move on to strength training?
I think let's talk about some curls for the girls, peaks for the freaks.
Oh, all right.
If the bar's not bending, you're just pretending. I mean, I could go all day.
All right, so now relating nutrition and strength training together. So we talked earlier about, not consuming enough calories and adding more movement and whatnot is sending a signal that we don't need tissues. Okay, well, to kind of counteract that, strength training sends a signal to your body that you do need muscle and you do need to build tissue. Okay, and in order for yourself to build tissue, along with strength training in general, you're going to have to eat more calories to build those tissues, which is essentially what we all want. We all want to eat more calories, okay? So even if you're in the calorie deficit and strength training, it's still better than being in calorie deficit and not strength training. Now, do I want someone to slowly increase their calories while they're strength training?
That'd probably be a good thing, wouldn't it?
Yes, that will do wonders. I have a one-on-one client who he was eating like 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day. Okay, and he's eating whole foods, all whole foods. I told him, I was like, hey, you should bump those calories. Okay, we bumped him to 3,000. He started losing weight. Went from 180 down to like 175. I was like, okay. And lost his weight. Yep, because his body was so adapted to this. And it's a crazy metabolism is probably one of the most complex things in science. We do not know about it for sure. Okay, so we went to 3,000. He lost weight. Okay, we went to 3,500. He continued to lose 1 or 2 pounds, and we've stayed there and he's eventually kind of leveled off and started to put on a little bit, but he's feeling better. He's feeling stronger in the gym. He feels like he has more energy throughout the day. So we've been running that for about 3 weeks. And then I told him, I was like, hey, let's cut it down. Let's cut down about 500 calories because we've been kind of getting used to that. Our body's kind of getting used to it. Let's cut it down a little bit. So we went down to like 3,000 calories, 2,750, something like that. And his body weight dropped immediately. Okay. Now, some of that's water for sure. But he's like, it's crazy because my body's like, what are you doing? I'm so hungry. Give me those calories. And that's just his metabolism. Just like, man, it's just using what he's given it. And so it's kind of crazy. It is a kind of a mind warp thing where it's like going back to the thought of like, we need to move more. We need to eat less. That's what we're going to do to lose weight. But in reality, a lot of times, it's almost the exact opposite of what you need to do to lose weight, especially for someone who hasn't been strength training at like a serious level or trying to build muscle mass, just trying to burn calories. That person is the one that's going to benefit the most from eating more and focusing more on strength training. Dude, well, that's the thing though. Like he's able to eat 3,500 calories now and not gain weight.
How long would you keep him in that deficit then?
Like a week.
So you're going to kind of go almost like hills and valleys with it?
Yeah,
like,
so you're gonna build up. It's just kind of like training and like a deload. So you're going to build up for 4 weeks or so in training. Then you're going to have a deload to kind of give the body a rest. And you're going to build up and give the body the rest.
So at what point like is in your build I mean, we build like 97%
Mhm.
on, on our highest training weeks and our overloads. So at what point, like, what is the top end amount of calories that you would build somebody to? And then would you almost have like a
As
max
much
out
as they're
week?
comfortable with.
Really?
Like,
And before they start turning like those calories into fat, if you start noticing them gaining weight, or what is kind of your
so that's where
how do you measure that? So if somebody's wanting to do this on their own, like and they're eating 25 calories, week 2 maybe bump up to 2750, then 3000, 32,
Mhm.
drop back to 27, and kind of stair step it up. But how high would they go?
as high as they can go while still, obviously you got to trust the process a little bit. As high as they can go while still seeing strength gains in the gym, while your clothes are still fitting the way you want them to, and your energy levels are still very high and where you want them. Because that's some of the things you'll see with people who are restricting themselves and not strength training as much. Like their body weight's kind of stagnated, but they're not seeing strength gains. Their energy levels throughout the day are like, oh man, I need that 17th cup of coffee for the day, to get me through. Okay.
Or they just need to sleep more at night.
Just for those that do that, I hope I'm not touching a nerve, but I kind of hope I am. Like, that's not normal. Like, you shouldn't have to do that to get through your day. You shouldn't feel like crap throughout the day, every day.
And so is there a better time to eat? I mean, Americans, I feel like a lot of times dinner is our biggest meal, whereas like in other parts of the world, breakfast or lunch is kind of like more the focus. So is there, we're talking about increasing these calories. So is there a time that you would suggest somebody increasing the calorie count of a meal?
Not necessarily. I think we're getting into too specifics right there. I think that might be overwhelming. But if someone is, an advanced trainer or is like an athlete, like in season or whatever, or out of season trying to build, I think someone like that, definitely not the general person, I would add in calories probably around their workout, or even like intro workout, like Gatorade powder or something like that. Because
so for the regular person, hey, if you have like your client, when you told him to go from 2,700 calories to 3,000, it didn't matter what time of day he entered those. So he could have had he could have had he could have had dinner at 5 and another snack at 7:30 to kind of finish off those calories. Wouldn't have mattered if he would have had it doesn't matter when that snack would have been. It could have been at 10 a.m.
Yeah, for him, all he did essentially was add like a half cup of rice to his first meal and his second meal, and started cooking stuff in oil and butter. What he started doing to get in some calories.
So because
he's someone who, like, it was hard for him to get in enough calories. I'm like, dude, you got to get in those calories. And so I was like, hey, here's some easy things you do. Add some avocado. That's really easy to eat. Super delicious. Add some oil. Add some butter, stuff that's easy to consume. Most people don't have that issue, but if you do.
Well, I think that's the practical ways though for people. I mean, kind of like we were talking about earlier, is how does a mother or a father in a family who is trying to, kind of live this way, but yet still trying to have the diets for, the meals for their kids who, it is hard to get kids to always eat whole foods. What do you do to increase your calories without making tons and tons more? Adding butter, adding, a half a cup of rice. I mean, that's simple stuff versus making a whole nother side dish.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes people probably get overwhelmed, with how do I add calories? What do I do? And then they'll eat packaged foods to increase those calories. Well, that's not what you're really talking about.
Yeah, it's not what we're trying to do. Like that's not going to make you, it might feel better in the moment, but that's not going to make you feel better overall in the long term.
Yeah, so half a cup of rice, add another servings of vegetables, cook your vegetables in butter.
If you can tolerate dairy, drink some whole milk, eat some cottage cheese, stuff like that has protein in it. That's another way to get more protein, which is super important in building muscle. But also, if you get the whole milk versions of those, you can add a lot of calories there, healthy fats too.
Yeah.
Just simple stuff like that.
Versus what the nutrition world has claimed to make sure you drink skim, right?
Yeah.
What is skim milk? I mean, it's water with coloring, right?
And basically, you can't absorb the vitamin D in it because there's no fat. You kind of need fat to absorb the vitamin D.
Yeah,
So
that's what I'm saying. It's water with food coloring, basically. You pee it all out.
Yeah.
So
I guess going back down the strength training route, like, building more muscle and focusing on strength is going to increase your metabolism and allow you to eat more food, which going back to earlier is what we want. Like we want to have more metabolic flexibility. Essentially, the more muscle mass you have, the more calories you're going to be able to eat because those your muscles are an expensive tissue. They require a lot of calories to maintain. That's why whenever we don't strength train and we just send a signal to like, condition, run, bike, whatever, and that's it. It's kind of like, well, don't really need those muscles. It's not helping us get to our goal versus strength training and sending that signal to be like, no, we need those muscles. Like we need to maintain those. So we need some more calories. Like, can you please give us those?
Definitely. So when you're talking to somebody about strength training, and I mean that's kind of our main focus today. Like, give them like an idea of like kind of what is the bare requirements for a strength training like program. What would you tell somebody like, hey, this is when I'm saying strength training on this podcast, here's what I'm talking about. Is it 5 sets of 5 on deadlift like you did in high school, or 5 sets of 5 on hang power cleans, and then an accessory movement to a clean?
Mm-hmm.
But what exactly are you communicating? Is there something that you think because is more like beneficial than other?
So let's just take an average person off the street. So average Jane or Joe coming off the street. Okay, I know we're across the gym, but say this person has no CrossFit experience. So first off, I'm going to make sure that person can move their body weight. Okay, that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start them figuring out how to move their body weight, how to do an air squat, how to make sure they can have the flexibility to get their arms over their head. There's some prerequisites for someone before they kind of start strength training.
So even if you don't have a set of weights or dumbbells or anything, you can strength train by doing air squats, push-ups, sit-ups. Would that be? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the base. I mean, anybody could do this.
Yeah, and you can still progressively overload those. Like if you were to perform like a 20-second squat, like 10 seconds down, 10 seconds up, you do about 5 of those, your quads are going to be screaming.
It'll be a little spicy.
Yeah. Okay. But so let's say they have the basics of that covered. Okay. The majority of someone's strength training is going to be, I'm sure people heard the compound lifts. Okay. And to me, like what I'm thinking there, some type of deadlift, some type of squat, some type of overhead press, some type of row, and probably a pull-up variation. So you're pushing with your legs, you're pulling with your legs, you're pressing overhead, you're pulling with your lats, and I still think people overcompensate by pressing too much. Probably maybe even add a bench press in there. So bench press in a row. So you got 6 things. Okay.
Bench press.
Yeah. So you got 6 things there. And honestly, the simplest thing you could do is take 15 minutes each day and do one of those each day.
Just start with one compound lift. So if you were to say, hey, I'm going to go buy some weights, I mean, you could do this with a kettlebell. You could do this with dumbbells. You could do
this doesn't have to be a barbell.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sometimes a misconception. Compound lifts are not solely done through barbells. I mean, they're done through multiple.
Oh, man. And I think, and especially for someone who has like done majority barbell stuff, like say someone who's only done squatting, benching, deadlifting with a barbell, they, like a powerlifter, they're going to get a lot of strength gains by not even doing bilateral squats. They're going to get a lot of gains by doing lunges. They're going to get a lot of stuff by doing step ups. They're going to get a lot of gains by doing single leg stuff, but that's for the advanced trainer. For someone who's been training advanced. If someone who's brand new and they know how to move their body, they're going to get the biggest bang for the buck by doing the compound lifts. Yeah. And so doing those, anywhere from 3 to 5, 6 sets of varying rep ranges. So getting into programming, maybe your first 3 weeks are 12 to 15 reps. Then you get heavier and you go 8 to 10 reps and you get heavier and 4 to 6 reps, stuff like that. So you're progressively overloading weight over time, but like going through those different various rep ranges and making sure you rest in between sets. Okay. That is, I think, is the biggest key to building muscle, because say you do a set of 12 or 15, and it's relatively heavy for you. So by the end, you're like, man, I can maybe do one more rep. You need to rest for probably 2 to 3 minutes to kind of let your muscles recover. And that way you can do that again.
You'd also say resting would come as you approach maximum load. You would need that same amount of recovery. So if you're pushing in, they say the 80s to 90% range.
You're
of
going to
your
need
1 rep
more
max.
reps. Yeah.
You're
So
gonna
if you're
need-
if you're doing like 12 to 15 reps, you're probably going to need a little less rest than you are doing a 1 rep max.
Yeah.
Because
so volume, your body's going to recover, and the signal that it's sending is probably a little different than
yeah,
your 1 rep.
oh yeah, because so essentially the higher reps you do, you're sending. It's more of a muscular endurance signal.
Exactly.
Like your body's getting really good at higher reps.
And they also talks about, well, how does that spin into like the idea of like hypertrophy as far as like somebody who's looking to gain muscle mass and not as much muscle strength? Is that getting into the weeds too much for this conversation?
Well, I mean, I think we can kind of dumb it down a little bit. So essentially, that can come down to volume, and volume is reps times sets times weight. Okay. Now there is some caveats to that. So say someone's doing 3 sets of 6 at 80%. Okay, that's going to be, and so that's who knows 100 pounds. So that comes out to be, what is that? 2,400 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay. Now someone's doing 6 sets of 3 at whatever that same
percentage,
whatever that comes out to be 2,400 pounds.
Yeah.
In that different rep range. That's going to be pretty close to, you're going to get some strength and hypertrophy gains. Now, the person doing sets of 3 is going to get more strength gains, though, because it's more specific.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Now, where that kind of is, has a fault, you can't take like 20, you're not going to be able to take like 20% of your 1 rep max and do like 100 reps and still get the same hypertrophy building muscle gains as you would by doing 60 to 80%, 60 to 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I think that's the one thing I want to make sure people are smart about. Like they do have a small, you don't need to, I mean, Cody and I are professionals. There's people out there that are way smarter than us that do this, but you do need to have some sense of strength training before you just start rocking out like sets of 20 and 25 with a dumbbell, or, just having a little bit of sense of like, hey, be smart. Don't hurt yourself and don't kill yourself up front with soreness and, dealing with DOMs and all that other stuff.
Yeah. And because, for sure. And I think that's where, especially a lot of like new people just getting into fitness are like, man, I'm just going to go after
I'm just going to kill myself.
Yeah. And even, and we experience this some here is like some people like, they're like, man, I just want to leave my workout just on the floor. Like I don't want to have anything left. And realistically, you probably that's not how you want to do things. A little bit of soreness is okay. And sometimes, we program workouts that are a little aggressive, but you don't want in an ideal world, you don't want to be sore for 4 days following.
Yeah.
You probably overdid it. Whether that's fault of someone, your coach, someone, it comes down to kind of knowing where you're at and knowing like what your body can tolerate.
Yeah. But I think that's where having a coach, I mean, like having a coach who knows that and having someone there to kind of help guide you.
And trusting that coach in what they're saying.
Yes.
Like they're not saying this so that you don't get as good of a workout. They're saying this so that you can come back tomorrow and work out to a full capacity. Because if my legs are sore from doing a heavy squat session or a bunch of squatting and I can't hardly move my legs, that's still going to have an effect the next day on if I try and do some like shoulder press or push press or something. Like I can't activate all of my muscles to their fullest capacity.
Well, and I think sometimes people will jump on to different things on the internet, and not have an understanding of really what's going on. And they're so sore, it actually just ends their process after 3 or 4 days.
They're like, man, I can't handle this. Why would I do this?
Exactly. Because this is stupid.
Yeah.
And that's always a big thing. I mean, I feel like, Cody and I, we are, we're constantly having conversations, sometimes intense, sometimes not as intense, but just like trying to really like find a great, like, common point of like what is best for our athletes and what is, philosophy wise, how do things really look best for people? And so I think if you've got a coach or coaches that are in that, who care about the person, and they say, hey, this might not be the greatest of choice, maybe listen to them, because A, they're hoping to prevent you from getting injured. B, they're hoping to, they're hoping for you to be, get the most out of your workout. And C, we want to see you work out over a lifetime. Because right now, I know I'm not, and you're not. Ain't none of us going to the games right now. And so, like, if you have the goal of the games, you got a lifetime to get there still too, and you're not going to get there in a year.
Yeah, and I, we're training for longevity here, and I heard this quote the other day, and it like blew my mind. Like, it's like I knew this, but I never heard it put this way, and it said, "Muscle is the longevity organ," and I never thought of it like that, but I'm like, every study out there on older people and elderly people is like, oh, the more muscle mass you have, the more resilient your body is. The less frail you're going to be. The less likely you are to break something whenever you fall. If you fall, you're going to be able to push yourself back up off the ground. And I thought about that. I'm like, my goodness, why has that not been communicated more? Like, the message out there in the fitness industry is like, oh, and and this is the fitness industry's fault. It's like, oh, I want to be skinny. I want to be super skinny and super toned. It's like, but they don't educate on how to get there. It's like, oh, this person strength trained for 10 plus years and focused on building muscle, focused on building their calories up. Hopefully in most cases, if not, then that's unfortunate. But they focused on building muscle and building these things because in reality, the things that are going to make you toned is by building muscle because that's what shapes your body. And people and the excuse where people are like, oh, I don't want to get super bulky. I don't want to get, super thick.
I know. I always love that excuse when people tell me, I'm like, hey, come check us out. We do CrossFit. And they're like, oh, I don't want to be that bulky. I'm like.
And my response is like, dude, I've been trying to get bulky for 10 years.
Yeah, 100%.
Look at me. I'm not a massive dude.
Yeah. And that's just it. Like, really. And it took me, when playing football, it took me 5 years to finally get to 300 pounds,
Yeah.
And that was easy.
And you were trying.
I was trying 5,000 calories a day, and that was a 5-year process. So I think that's just, there is so many misconceptions. And, I think that's where street training is definitely a great thing and is needed. And, if you're not, if you're not doing anything else, start doing some push-ups and some sit-ups and some air squats. I mean, just start there. Add some whole foods into your diet from the perimeter of the grocery store, and just start there. Start your fitness journey with that, and then, hey, if you wanna expand, then I would encourage find a CrossFit gym. I mean, I really believe in the methodology of CrossFit. I feel like we do a great job of that here. Or find somewhere else that is going to be lining up with what you enjoy, because there's a little bit of a side of working out that there has to be an enjoyment and a stress relief, and then Cody and I have had these conversations, all my years of college football and everything of lifting heavy. I don't really enjoy back squatting over 400 pounds anymore. It's not fun to me. I enjoy more the conditioning side, but I still need my strength training in order to do the CrossFit side that I need, that I love. And so there's just this constant balance of like, make sure you enjoy it, make sure it's not a drudgery for you to go enjoy, but just start simple.
Yeah, and on that note, do we got time to go down like the mental health aspect? Okay, we can go over an hour. It's fine. So, because I had things here, like, so I had some notes. I was like, one, I'm never going.
Why did I see those notes first?
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. They're good notes.
I'm making good questions off of listening to you.
Yeah. So I wrote down this. I was like, I'm not ever going to discourage someone to not work out, but I at least want them to be educated on what they're doing and like how it's going to affect the body, And that goes back to the calorie deficit and whatnot, because that's a major stressor on the body. Okay. And a lot of people, when they come into the gym, okay, they're already stressed, whether it be life, something's going on at home, or, maybe a lot of people come in the gym, they're like, man, I want to look better. Okay. And those people cut their calories a lot.
Amen. And I tell people to start when they first start, don't change your diet. Don't change anything.
Yeah. And
just
maybe
start working out.
And maybe they even come in a calorie deficit, which is a major stressor on the body anyway. And so pairing that with like coming in and exercising, or pairing that with, let's go down the conditioning route first, like where they're just running all the time or biking all the time, like that signal is a major stressor to the body. Okay.
Yes.
It feels good in the time. It releases a lot of endorphins. It feels really good at the time. Okay. But it's kind of like a drug. Okay. So, yeah. So, but then you come back down. Okay. Just so on drugs, you feel really good in the moment. Okay. There's something maybe you're escaping from or anything. You feel really good here. You come back down. You're like, man, I feel like crap. I'm going to go take that drug again. Man, that feels good. Oh, it comes back down. What happens over time?
Well, that you're gonna need more of that drug.
Your
in order
body
to reach
adapts,
that same
and
height.
you got to keep adding more and more and more to get that same high. Okay, exercise isn't different from that. Our bodies don't really know the difference. Okay, from that dopamine perspective. Obviously, there's other things that are different, but so something's going on. You go to relieve the stress. You get this dopamine rush, comes back down. Okay, go back, dopamine rush, comes back down. Okay, that's where people can get in a bad cycle of just adding more and more and more and more exercise. And that, causes a lot of problems in itself. If that person is stressed and they keep adding more stress to their body, okay, that's just going to lead to just increased cortisol, just like chronically. I'll say that's like one of the number one things, just increased cortisol chronically. Like you need to have some cortisol sometimes, but you don't want to have it inflamed all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's going to lead to just long-term like increase in blood pressure, atherosclerosis, diabetes, all of these things. And then if we go back to the CrossFit world, is on the sickness spectrum. Okay. We don't want to be on that sickness spectrum. Okay. So I completely understand the exercising to get away from, the stress and anxiety, this bear that is in your life. I get that, but also that is a slippery slope to go down, because once you start down, that's, man, I feel good. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep adding more, that thing at some point, and I say this out of love because I've experienced it. We've all probably experienced it. Like that needs to be addressed, or, you never know where that's going to go down,
Well,
and how your body's going to react to that.
And having someone, like us who, I think in the conditioning world, the volume, it's, the amount of volume, I think you're right, is like, hey, if I'm doing, like our Wednesday workout, which is either you have a choice between a heavy day or a conditioning day. If I'm going to do conditioning and then I'm going to do another 30 minutes on top of it, this, and this, it's like, man, that's kind of outside of that's just going too far. Your body, you've already stressed it, like you said, maybe with lack of calorie deficit. Now you've done the
You've
workout.
sent the signal to like, oh, I don't need the muscle,
Exactly.
whatever.
And so you continue to bear down, and like you have to make some choices. Like you have to either, like be okay with the conditioning and battle there and get that done, and then don't do any more, because your body is going to break down over that time if you add in, continue to do that kind of. And I'll say that was a big thing, like, in early days for me in CrossFit, it was like, oh, I want to do, like 2 hours worth of Metconning. And that was probably wrong, but I think, like, I think that's one thing that's helped us to kind of create some balance inside of our programming, is trying to get people to hit, like hit targets of like heart rates and targets of like metabolic pathways and those things of like, hey, we want you to sprint, but we want you to sprint for a real short amount of time, or we want you to kind of have this longer, slowly gradual increase in intensity workout. And so like, but what we program is enough.
Yeah.
Like that's enough. You don't need to go beyond
Yeah,
this, because that's when you start seeing injuries. You start seeing,
especially on like the conditioning side. Like if someone like does a long conditioning workout first and it's like, oh, I'm going to go do some strength training now. It's like, now it's probably not the best time to do strength training, because there's this term in the strength training world called junk volume. Okay. You're adding in volume for the sake of adding in volume, but you're not going to get anything out of that volume because you've taxed yourself so much on this conditioning aspect. You're not going to be worth anything when you're trying to strength train. When you're fresh, so say after the Metcon, you're strength training, you're doing, say you try to do deadlifts and you're deadlifting 185 for 5 reps when you're after the Metcon. But when you're fresh, you're normally like 235 for 5 reps. That 185 isn't doing anything for you. You're not going to build muscle from that, because that's not a new stimulus to your body. That's just junk volume. That's just like, and then, we're not going to do anything with that. So in our class setting, like on Wednesdays, for those that, like to do a Metcon and a heavy day, do the heavy day first and then the Metcon. You're going to get much more benefits probably on both, but definitely from the strength training because it's not going to gas you. You're not going to be gassed from doing a Metcon first. You're going to strength train and then your Metcon and you're going to be done.
From heavy day first.
Yes, heavy day first and then Metcon and then done.
And you know, I know for me the temptation always there is I always feel so much better doing the Metcon first. You know what I mean? I physically feel better. I don't know if it's the dopamine release or whatever it is. But I, you know, and probably too in the CrossFit world, you know, there's times when we do like a conditioning piece and then try to find a max. I mean, how many open workouts has there been with that?
That comes back to the sport of CrossFit.
Exactly. Which is fun.
Which is fun.
But
for
it's
long
part of
term,
what we do.
it's part of the community thing. But for long term health, we all got to realize that probably ain't what's best for us.
The sport of it, yes.
The sport of CrossFit.
The sport of it, yes. We're not going to the games tomorrow. Jack might be, but you know what I mean? I know, and probably that comes back to if somebody is like me, is like, man, I always feel like I lift better afterwards. Probably need to do a better job warming up.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it probably goes back to more of like, hey, if you know, like myself, the class warm-up is really good for me in the Metcons, but because, you know, my old knees, my hips and stuff, I probably need to get here 5 or 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
Do some mobility, do some maybe extra biking or skiing, something, whatever is going to kind of
get some blood flowing, warm up the joints and stuff.
Yeah.
Because you hear it all the time. And like athletes are like, man, by the third set, I feel good. But those first two sets aren't very good.
Horrible.
It's like, well, maybe you should have done those first two sets before the workout and then start the workout.
Exactly. And I think that's just, you know, like, and again, it goes back to the person who, hey, gets here at 5 o'clock, you know, right on time for class. I get that too. Just be very intentional about your warm up mentally.
Yeah.
Like
you know, like we know your body pretty well, but you know you better than anybody else. And if you know that you don't get warm until that third set of whatever we're doing, maybe take a little time beforehand to focus on that.
Or focus in on the warm up that we provided for you, because the coaches are warming you up purposely.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do a great job of doing a general warm up of all of the movements. But like I said, it comes down to specificity. Like everybody's different. Like I probably need to warm up my shoulders more than, you know, someone else who has super good shoulder flexibility. You know, that's just something that, like you, we don't like you. So that just kind of comes down to us knowing you, but also you knowing you and telling us like maybe what you need or like, hey, is there something I can do for my shoulder? And like we can, I think most of our coaches are good enough to be like, boom, we can give you just one thing right there that'll help you out.
Most certainly. And I think that's what people need to be smart about. And, you know, I like the idea of the mental, you're talking about the mental health side. I mean, I know for me, you know, for years, football was where I dealt with that bear, you know, that anger and that frustration, those bears in my life or those lions that are roaring. And so to continue to like try to use strength and conditioning, you know, the CrossFit work, our Metcons, I mean, they are beneficial. They do help me be able to sort through things, and I think they are a positive thing. But if I continue to like doing just the workout is enough, I'm not going to do the workout and then go beat myself up and, you know, even more and do another 5-mile run. Because obviously if I can't get the stress relieved in that time period or time domain that we're allowing in our Metcons, you're not going to get it. It ain't going to
get done by doing more exercise.
Exactly. It's not going to get done by doing another 5-mile run.
And even in that scenario, like, you know, I'm a proponent of, you know, getting that out of your own head, talking to somebody. You know,
most certainly.
Which we've all, us here sitting at this table, like we've talked to people outside of the gym, whether it be, you know, counseling or anything like that. Just to get that out, that way it's not just us arguing with ourselves on, you know.
Most certainly. And if you use the gym, like if you've been coming to a gym for 2 years, 3 years, 6 months, whatever, and you're still every day having battles, I would encourage you to go see somebody, go see a counselor, go talk to someone.
Use the gym as a supplement to your mental escape. It should not be the number one thing you do to get away from whatever this is in your ear.
And if you like, you know, Cody, who's one who I definitely, I don't want to speak for you, but I think you probably like lifting more than conditioning. I think you're on that side of the pendulum, right?
That's just because, you know, all the things we've talked about.
Yeah, but you like conditioning. I mean, you like lifting more when I like conditioning more. Like it's it's one of those things of like, hey, whatever that person's stressor is, like that's probably going to help them that day, but they can overdo both sides.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's that dopamine response, that eventually comes back down, and it's either like, do we keep doing that,
or we actually deal with it.
Yeah, or do we face this problem head on and get through this?
But life throws.
And I know that's hard.
Yeah.
That is one of the hardest things to admit and do is facing that head on.
Oh gosh, and life throws us so many curves on a daily basis. From deaths in families to loss of friendships to financial crisis. I mean, heck, look at the world right now. You can't turn on the news without being stressed.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
But you can't let that control you either.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's where, limiting how much time you watch the news and get on social media and stuff like that, and you're not comparing yourself to others, and also like being in, and that's one thing that's great about CrossFit too, is like being in some type of community where you have others that you can talk to, talk through things that are going on, like people that you trust. I'm not saying talk to everybody. Don't tell everybody your problems. But if you have a select few that you're able to talk to and work through some things, by all means, I think that's great.
Definitely.
I think that's the number one thing.
And Jack has given us the cut sign.
All right, guys, that concludes podcast episode 7. We spit so much knowledge that all of our SD cards filled up, so we're shooting this on an iPhone. We'll hopefully get this out to you soon. Next podcast, episode 8, we're going to have the woman in charge of the gym, Miss Heidi Durham, on the podcast, so that'll be a fun time.
I can't wait.
Then after
this
that,
is going to be fun.
After that, we'll hopefully get another one out, educational one out there. Please ask us any questions. Send DMs to our social medias. That way we have stuff to talk about that you guys want to hear about. That's the number one thing is like we want to talk about things you guys want to hear about. So please feel free to send us stuff. Jack's in charge of social media. So thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
Deuces with the drip right here. Thanks, Cobio.